everyone, it's Melissa, and today I'm doing the It's All Relative book tag. The original is by A.J. Dunn Reads and Writes, and they very kindly tagged me in that video, so thank you for that. So this is a fun one. It's all questions about like different relationships in books. So the first prompt is Mammamia. Recommend a book with a mother character that is pivotal to the story. And there are so many good ones, but the first one that popped into my mind was Coraline by Neil Gaiman. It's a middle grade like horror fantasy book, and it's really creepy, and Coraline discovers a portal to another world. And in this world, everything's kind of the same, but like a little bit better or a little bit more fantastical. And in this world lives her other mother and other father. And her other mother is basically instrumental to the entire story and will give you nightmares. And I love the book. And my husband loves the book so much that we named our daughter Coraline. Prompt 2 is Papa Don't Preach, a book with a father character you like or despise. So I think this still counts, but I'm going to go more for a father figure. And I'm going to go with Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So Dr. Frankenstein is very much the father figure / creator of the monster in the book. And you can't help but despise him because he's the worst father in history. He neglects his responsibility and abandons his creature, and then bad things happen because he was not there for his child / creation. Prompt number 3 is Brothers and Sisters, a book with an interesting sibling relationship. Reading this prompt made me realize that I don't read a lot of books with sibling relationships, but the one that came through for me was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I just love the depiction of the relationship between the two sisters, Eleanor and Marianne. And I just love how they have such a strong bond and they obviously love each other, but they're so different personality-wise. One is so practical and kind of pragmatic, and is kind of the rock of the family, whereas the other one is so just like romantic and not really that sensible maybe, and just views the world through these rose-colored glasses and has mood swings and feels everything very strongly. And I just love the dynamic of those two sisters. Prompt 4 is It's Been 84 Years, a book you like that is multi-generational or chronicles a character's whole life. This is another thing that I've realized I don't really read. Well, I already knew that I don't really like multi-generational sagas, or I don't really gravitate towards them. But I hadn't realized that I don't think that I've read a book that chronicles a character's entire life. So the closest I could really get for a book that I like that's multi-generational would be kind of like an entire family, I guess. And that's The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. So that follows one family and their struggles during the giant Dust Bowl of the 20s, and having to like abandon their farm and try to seek better opportunity by packing all of their belongings into their truck and driving out to California. And I'm counting that because it's the story of this whole family, but it's not like multi-generational in the same way that a saga spanning across generations is, but I still think it counts. Prompt 5 is You Complete Me, a book with an interesting marriage as a central element to the story. I think you might be able to argue how central or not some of these relationships are in this book, but I'm going to choose a book that has a few different marriages that I think all play, they might not be like central, but they all play an important role in how the story develops, and that's How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Sherry Jones. I can think of four marriages off the top of my head. There are a lot of different relationships in this book, but I can think of four marriages that, while I don't think any one is at the true center of the story, they all are kind of like pillars holding up the story. And I just think this was a really interesting book about relationship and generational trauma and like escaping toxic relationships. And I would highly, highly recommend it. Prompt number 6 is Picture It, Sicily, a book with an interesting elder character, i.e., a grandparent, great grandparent, etc. So for this, I'm picking an Agatha Christie that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. It's Crooked House, and it has an interesting elder character, but the character is dead. The character is the murder victim, and they're dead from the outset of the novel. But you kind of get glimpses into who this person was based on them trying to figure out the murder and talking to all the relatives and stuff. So it's the patriarch, like a grandparent of this very rich family. They all live together in this house. They're all a little bit eccentric, and basically all of his family members have a motive for killing him. And it gave me just a little bit, not a lot, but it gave me a little bit of like Knives Out vibes, the same kind of like eccentric, maybe slightly controlling grandparent, head of the family, patriarch, who dies, and detectives have to come in and like interview all the family members and see what might have happened. But I definitely think the character of that grandfather, even though you don't get to meet him like in person, is definitely a very interesting character. And I really enjoyed that mystery. Prompt 7 is Friends with Benefits, a book with a found family or friends as family element. This was hard to narrow down because I think this is a trope that I really enjoy, but I'm going to go with Beyond the Bright Sea by Lauren Woke. So this is a middle grade book, and it's set off the New England coast. I can't remember if it's like Connecticut or Massachusetts, but essentially it is about this young girl. She's probably, I think, 10 or 12 in the book, and she is growing up on these like kind of remote islands off the coast of New England, with this older man who found her washed up on shore in this skiff, and they have just a lovely like father-daughter relationship. And during the book, she starts to find clues as to where she might have come from, but she always keeps like her found family at the center. And I thought it was just a lovely, lovely book. Prompt 8 is I Think We're Alone Now, a book with a character who was lost, left behind, or abandoned. It can also be a story with an orphaned or adopted character. So when I thought of a character who was lost or abandoned, I immediately thought of Pi from Life of Pi by Jan Martel. It's about a young man who, well, boy, how old is he in that book? He's a teenager, I think, maybe? It doesn't matter. The ship that he's on sinks, and the ship was transporting a bunch of zoo animals. I think his parents owned a zoo, maybe, or something like that. It's been a while since I've read this book. But the ship sinks, and he manages to get onto a life raft, and so does a tiger. And he is lost at sea with a tiger. If that doesn't say lost, I don't know what does. Prompt number 9 is the last one, I think. Yeah. Fur Baby, a book where a pet or animal is a part of the family and or plays an important role in the book. So I'm going to go with a weird little book I read last year that I can't stop thinking about. It was so bizarre, but I really loved it. I think it actually made my top 10 list last year. And it's 15 Dogs by Alexis Andre. No, it's not. It's 15 Dogs by Andre Alexis. The author's name is Andre Alexis. So it's hard to describe this book. It's so weird. So essentially, there are two gods. I even forget who they are. Apollo and Hermes, maybe? It doesn't matter. There are two gods, and they're arguing over like humanity and happiness, and if the intelligence of humans makes them more or less happy, is kind of how I remember it. But essentially, they're debating these kinds of questions where one of them says something like, well, if you gave another animal the intelligence and like the cognitive functioning of a human, that they would die unhappy. And they basically make this into a bet, and they decide to bestow human intelligence on the next animals they find. They are walking by a pound or vet clinic or something at the time, and the 15 dogs who are in this clinic are bestowed with human intelligence, and the book follows all 15 dogs to the end of their lives to see what happens if any of these dogs will die happy or if they will all die unhappy. There's an element of like ignorance is bliss, and that like intelligence and overthinking can cause a lot of like grief and unhappiness. I know that sounds weird, and the book is weird, but it is about like language and poetry and art and like humanity and their relationships between people and conflict between people, but it's dogs. And it is just, I think a lot of people would really hate this book. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, but that's what I'm going to go with for the last prompt. If you read any of the books that I mentioned, please comment below and I would love to have a chat with you. Or if you've done this tag, please let me know and I'd love to check it out. And as always, I hope everyone's doing well and we will chat soon. Take care. Bye.